Cue the protests. The eviction moratorium has officially been overturned. This is just breaking news here this evening. That's why I'm here in my pajamas. This has been a long time coming. It's been going on now for about a year and a half. And it is finally made it to the Supreme Court. This is actually fascinating that it got to the Supreme Court as quickly as it did. They are not even in session. They're not scheduled to come back, I think, until October 2nd. So for them to rule on something while they're away on recess is very significant. And this is something that just went in sideways with many of these Supreme Court justices. So we're going to get into it here and take a look at, I think it's actually more interesting to look at what the judges wrote themselves, but we're going to first start off with an article from the New York Times that was released here this evening. Okay, so it says right here, Supreme Court ends Biden's eviction moratorium. Now, there's a lot of things wrong in this article. We'll kind of point them out as we go. First and foremost, this is not Biden's eviction moratorium. This is the CDC's eviction moratorium. So right off the bat, they're pinning this on Biden instead of the CDC. Now, was he part and parcel to that? Of course, right? He was encouraging them to do it, but it's not his eviction moratorium. It is the CDC's eviction moratorium. The ruling followed political and legal maneuvering by the administration to retain protections for tenants. It puts hundreds of thousands at risk of being put out of their homes. Okay, that's a falsehood too. It is not hundreds of thousands. It is literally millions of people. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 15 million people that are at risk of eviction. So this is grossly underestimating how many people are actually impacted by this, or how many non-paying tenants there are. See, I knew I'd eventually be able to get it out. All right, let's keep going. Washington. Oh, actually, I love these pictures, right? Kavanaugh, extend eviction moratorium to June 2020. Stop eviction. It's a free ride for a lot of people. Okay, so again, this is something that just came out this evening. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in the Boston market, so it's pretty late here for me. Anyways, the Supreme Court on Thursday rejected the Biden administration's latest moratorium on evictions, ending a political and legal dispute during a public health crisis in which the administration's shifting positions had subjected it to criticism from adversaries and allies alike. The court issued an 8-page majority opinion, which we're going to get to shortly, an unusual move in a ruling on an application for emergency relief where terse orders are more common. The court's 3 liberal justices dissented. Surprise, surprise. The decision puts hundreds of thousands, again, it's not hundreds of thousands, it's millions of tenants at risk of losing shelter, while the administration struggles to speed the flow of billions of dollars in federal funding to people who are behind in rent because of the coronavirus pandemic and its associated economic hardship. Only about $5.1 billion of the $46.5 billion in aid had been dispersed by the end of July, according to figures released on Wednesday, as bureaucratic delays at the state and local levels snarled payouts. Not true. That's certainly a part of it, but the bigger issue is that many of the people who are non-paying, they don't qualify for these state and local programs, right? Because they make too much money, because there's a bunch of people that are actually working that are just making a decision not to pay rent and save that money or put it towards something else or spend it somewhere else, take a great vacation, because they know that there's no consequences of not paying rent. So these programs require the cooperation of both the landlord and the tenant. Now, the landlords are certainly more than willing to help, but the tenants, why should they, right? There's no incentive for them to help out, because they could just walk away from this. And as soon as the tenant leaves, the landlord can no longer go seek those funds, because the tenant still has to be in the building. So it is just, the whole thing is a mess. It is terrific that this is ending, but I forgot what they call this, the 8-page majority opinion that the Supreme Court released was stunning. It was, I just read through it and I was just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is our Supreme Court. They are not happy in the least. So let's just jump over there. Oh, by the way, if you are enjoying this video and you'd like to see more like that, make sure that you smash that like button and subscribe for additional videos. All right, let's get into it. Okay, Supreme Court of the United States. One other disclaimer here. I am not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't even play one here on YouTube. So take all of this with a grain of salt. I'm just reading it from, again, this opinion that they've provided. A lot of these things I don't completely understand, but you can pick up the gist from reading this opinion piece. And I've highlighted just some of the sections that I do want to cover because it is long, at 8 pages long. And this just gets into it. It would be one thing if Congress had specifically authorized the action that the CDC had taken, but that has not happened. Instead, the CDC has imposed a nationwide moratorium on evictions in reliance on a decades-old statute that authorizes it to implement measures like fumigation and pest extermination. It strains credulity, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, maybe someone will correct me in the comment section, to believe that this statute grants the CDC the sweeping authority that it asserts. So the general gist of this is the Supreme Court is saying the CDC does not have the authority to do this. It is just massive. And you'll see it later on in this opinion piece because they mention some other things that where does it end? The CDC relied on, I'm not sure what this is, some type of article, 361 of the Public Health Service Act for authority to promulgate and extend the eviction moratorium. The provision states the Surgeon General, with the approval of the Secretary of Health and Human Services, is authorized to make and enforce such regulations as in his judgment are necessary to prevent the introduction, transmission, or spread of communicable diseases from foreign countries into the states or possessions, or from one state or possession into any other state or possession. So this is basically saying we want to keep people in their homes, or the CDC is saying that they want to keep people in their homes to prevent them from spreading COVID-19. And the only way that they can do that is if they literally stay inside. Well, I don't know if anyone was on vacation. I know I was this past couple weeks ago. We were on vacation. But if you were on vacation at all this summer, what did you see out there? Hordes of people, literally everywhere, no matter where you went. You go to the beach, people everywhere. You go to the mountains, the lakes, people everywhere. Airports, packed. Rental cars, can't get them. It was just insane. People were everywhere. So to use this as an argument of, oh, we just want to keep people safe and keep them in their house, doesn't really hold water here when everyone is out traveling and there are no restrictions whatsoever at the federal level. So they're just calling it out as like, this is ridiculous. The court declined to vacate the stay. Alabama Justice Kavanaugh concurred, explaining that he agreed with the district court that the CDC's moratorium exceeded its statutory authority. There's that authority again. But, and there's the big but, because the CDC planned to end the moratorium in only a few weeks, and because that time would allow for additional and more orderly distribution of congressionally appropriated rental assistance funds, he concluded that the balance of equities justified leaving the stay in place. Right, so Kavanaugh said, hey, it's already in place. We'll just wind it down. End of July 31st. We'll give you the end of the month. And this is a decision that they made back in the end of June 28th or something like that. And they said, we'll just leave it in place. And once it's over, it's over. And at that time, he was very clear, too, saying that this needs to be done by Congress. It can't be handled by the CDC. The moratorium expired on July 31st. 3 days later, the CDC reimposed it. Apart from slightly narrowing the geographic scope, the new moratorium is indistinguishable from the old. With the moratorium once again in place, the plaintiffs returned to the district court to seek vacature of its stay. The district court agreed with the plaintiffs that the stay was no longer warranted for two reasons. First, the government was unlikely to succeed on the merits, given the 4 votes to vacate the stay in this court in Justice Kavanaugh's concurring opinion. Second, the equities had shifted in the plaintiffs' favor. Vaccine and rental assistance distribution had improved since the stay was entered, while the harm to landlords had continued to increase. And the harm to landlords is huge. It's something in the neighborhood. I've read somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $20 million a month in unpaid rent. And that is going to haunt these people that haven't paid it. So this is just it was a terrible idea when it came along. It's still bad because these people are going to be stuck with this huge amounts of debt. And the money is there, but a lot of people just aren't willing to cooperate with the landlord in order to access it. But the court concluded that its hands were tied by the law of the case in light of the D.C. Circuit's earlier decision not to vacate the stay. That denial was followed by one more stop at the D.C. Circuit, where that court again declined to lift the stay. Having passed through the lower courts twice, the plaintiffs return as applicants to this court to again ask us to vacate the district court's stay. Right? So no one wants to... I made in my video the other day, it's like a hot potato. No one wants, everyone's like, I don't want to deal with it. So let's, you take it. No, you take it. No, you take it. Like, it's insane. Nobody wants to deal with it. So the Supreme Court ultimately has to rule on it because nobody else is courageous enough to do it. Well, ultimately, I mean, you could see it. Now, here's a perfect example, right? Nobody wants to do it because of this, right? Kavanaugh's name is on this. Kavanaugh, right? So now he's the bad guy. So people are going to be coming after him. And he is a justice. He's ruling, his job is to interpret the law and rule appropriately. Indeed, the government's read of I'm just calling this Article 361. I'm not even sure what this little character means. But again, somebody correct me in the comments for what it actually means, would give the CDC a breathtaking amount of authority. It is hard to see what measures this interpretation would place outside the CDC's reach. Oh, this is great. Okay, let's keep going. And the government has identified no limit in Article 361 beyond the requirement that the CDC deem a measure, quote unquote, necessary. Could the CDC, for example, mandate free grocery delivery to the homes of the sick or vulnerable, require manufacturers to provide free computers to enable people to work from home, order a telecommunications company to provide free high-speed internet service to facilitate remote work? This claim of expansive authority under Article 361 is unprecedented. Since that provision's enactment in 1944, no regulation premised on it has even begun to approach the size or scope of the eviction moratorium, and it is further amplified by the CDC's decision to impose criminal penalties of up to a $250,000 fine and 1 year in jail on those who violate the moratorium. Section 361A is a wafer-thin reed on which to rest such sweeping power. Wow, that is very strong language. And those are terrific examples of where does the overreach stop? There's a lot of great examples here. The high-speed internet service, right? Free computers, grocery delivery. Like, hey, it's what we have to do. But the CDC shouldn't be the one making those decisions. Your legislative body should be the one to create a law. That's the way. That's the way it works. That's like, 5th grade civics lesson. The equities do not justify depriving the applicants of the district court's judgment in their favor. The moratorium has put the applicants, along with millions of landlords across the country, at risk of irreparable harm by depriving them of rent payments with no guarantee of eventual recovery. Notice the wording here, millions of landlords across the country. And notice that New York Times article, what did it say? Hundreds of thousands. Please. Despite the CDC's determination that landlords should bear a significant financial cost of the pandemic, many landlords have modest means, and preventing them from evicting tenants who breach their leases intrudes on one of the most fundamental elements of property ownership, the right to exclude. Whew, hear, hear. Since the district court entered its stay, the government has had 3 additional months to distribute rental assistance funds to help ease the transition away from the moratorium. Whatever interest the government had in maintaining the moratorium's original end date to ensure the orderly administration of these programs has since diminished. And Congress was on notice that a further extension would almost surely require new legislation, yet it failed to act in the several weeks leading up to the moratorium's expiration. It is indisputable that the public has a strong interest in combating the spread of COVID-19 Delta variant. Correct. Like, nobody's arguing that. But our system does not permit agencies to act unlawfully, even in pursuit of desirable ends. This just talks about a case where concluding that even the government's belief that its action was necessary to avert a national catastrophe could not overcome a lack of congressional authorization. Again, that's what this is all about, congressional authorization. It is up to Congress, not the CDC, to decide whether the public interest merits further action here. Yeah, right. So Congress has got to do it. It's not up to the CDC. It's not, you can't act unilaterally like that and just void a whole bunch of contracts, right, that you've got as a landlord and a housing provider, and it's just a bad situation. If a federally imposed eviction moratorium is to continue, Congress must specifically authorize it. The application to vacate stay presented by the Chief Justice and by him referred to the court is granted. So ordered. Threw that in for effect. Anyways, what do you think about this? Is this high time that this is that this is actually happening, or should it continue? Should the eviction moratorium continue? I think what's going to be most interesting is now that the federal eviction moratorium has been lifted, what happens to the state and local ones? Do they follow suit? I would imagine in some places they're going to be like, yeah, well, that's what the federal says, but here in our state we're going to do this. California, New York in particular, those are the two states that jump off the map for me. But some of those other states, it's going to happen, and you saw it, right? Even just during that narrow window back in between July 31st and like August 2nd, like there were a bunch of evictions that occurred even just during the 2 days because they had already been processed by the courts and they were just waiting to actually enact them. So I think this is good news for the real estate industry in general. I think it restores my faith in the law because, having a contract, what did it mean if you have a contract between a landlord and a tenant and it wasn't honored? And it's fully enforceable. And the CDC can randomly step in and say, no, you can't do that. I don't know. It doesn't pass the sniff test, as they say. So I'm glad that the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of lifting this eviction ban. Again, I'd love to hear your comments down below and chime in and tell me if you agree or not. That's all I have here today. Again, my name is Brian, and thanks for watching. Bye for now.